Friends, before we get started here, we need to acknowledge the death of Lance Reddick, which is an absolute tragedy to the Destiny community. For those of y'all who do not know, Lance Reddick was, of course, the voice actor for Commander Zavala. He passed away earlier today, and that really hits a spot because Commander Zavala has always been a central character in Destiny 2, a very powerful character. His voice was very his voice acting was wonderful for Zavala. So just want to acknowledge that, offer condolences to his family, as well as any players who are going to miss him, which should be every player in Destiny. But yeah, that is yeah, I just wanted to precurse this video with that. But today, I am Worm, the gatekeeper of all things good, and we are going to talk about exotic glaives. I'm sorry, not exotic glaives. The exotic syntheseps and the glaive nerf that they did to them, which is wild because glaives and syntheseps have been a thing essentially forever. But since Winterbite came out, Bungie has, for one reason or another, decided just to nerf them altogether. And I want to talk about the good and the bad of this particular nerf, because I don't think it was all bad, but I think it was more bad than it was good. And hopefully this video will do a good job of explaining that. But for those of y'all who are unaware, Syntheseps is a Titan exotic set of gauntlets that basically, when you're surrounded by enemies, your melee damage deals, I want to say 400% more damage, 3 times damage. If I'm not mistaken, that could be out of date. It could do more. I don't really know. And you'll keep that buff as long as you're surrounded, and you'll keep it for about 10 seconds after you are no longer surrounded. Now, the interaction between those gauntlets, those exotic gauntlets, and glaives has always been one that has been very, very good, because glaives, of course, have a melee that takes advantage of a regular melee, not like a sword melee or a charge melee. They're just considered a melee. So glaives have basically, since they launched with Witch Queen, been able to take advantage of syntheseps and the damage boost that syntheseps gives to them, which of course has made syntheseps a great choice if you're running a glaive build. But Bungie felt like that was a little bit too much this season, and they nerfed the interaction, and now it seems like the melee that comes with a glaive when you have syntheseps on is less than a standard melee when you have syntheseps on, which is kind of egregious if you ask me, because syntheseps are a melee-based exotic, and I think this was done with the right idea in mind, which the right idea was, of course, the issue with our exotic heavy glaive, Winterbite, dealing absolutely insane amounts of damage as long as you had syntheseps on. But they went ahead and hit every glaive, or I'm sorry, yeah, every glaive hard with that. And there's an argument: was it a nerf to syntheseps? Was it a nerf to glaives? I'm not gonna pull up the patch notes here. But I believe that it was a nerf to syntheseps. They no longer work with the glaive melee, and in my opinion, this is wrong. Okay, this is not a good way to go. Now, I understand nerfing the interaction between the exotic heavy glaive and syntheseps, because that was kind of wild. Like, that was insanely good, and it did need to be reined in a little bit, in my opinion. But they did it not only for the Winterbites, but they did for all glaives. And so now, if you're using a glaive with syntheseps, it makes more sense to put your glaive away and then melee an enemy than it does to actually melee the enemy with a glaive, which in my opinion kills a ton of glaive builds, one of which that I have been using since Witch Queen came out. Or I'm sorry, not since Witch Queen came out, but since they updated glaives to work with syntheseps. And I think I need to retract what I said earlier. Syntheseps were not working with glaive when Witch Queen launched, but they did start working with glaives a little bit after, a couple months after. At any rate, I think this is a negative thing of Bungie to do, because glaives are a melee-based exotic. They need to work with melee-based exotics. If Bungie's going to do this to the syntheseps, they need to do the same thing with Karnstein armlets. Okay, they need to do the same thing with That's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. But same thing with Karnstein Armlets, which of course grants you health. It's a Warlock exotic, but it grants you health when you get melee kills. And I know that sounds like, oh, like why, like why hurt somebody else's, blah blah blah. But it does feel like Titans have been kind of on Bungie's chopping block lately, with several of the nerfs and stuff that have come to them. And this is just one more of those. Like, they're making it so that Syntheseps no longer works with glaives. Synthesept is an exotic that is supposed to work with melees in general. And for whatever reason, they decided, no, it can't work with any glaive. Now, again, I understand Winterbite, because Winterbite was doing some nutty damage with Syntheseps. And so I kind of get behind Bungie on that one. But something like my Lubre's Ruin, okay, without, that doesn't really have a god roll or anything like that. Like, they took away the ability for me to use Syntheseps with that. And here's why I think that this is primarily an issue, okay? Because with glaives, with Syntheseps in general, they are a melee-based exotic, meaning that in order to use them to their, to their full potential, you have to be right up close to the enemy. I mean, you've got to be as close as I am to you right now, right? Okay, you've got to be very, very close to the enemy. And let's be honest, in Grandmaster and Master level content, being close to the enemy is often a death wish. Correct me if I'm wrong in that, but I can't remember the last time that I just up and decided, you know what, I'm going to use, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to melee the crap out of this enemy in this Grandmaster Nightfall. It doesn't happen. However, with Syntheseps, you could make it happen. You could make a build out of it. It was not by any means the greatest build. Again, not talking about Winterbite here. Winterbite is on a whole nother level. But with all the other glaives, you could actually use glaives in in-game content with effect. You use a glaive melee with effect. They've taken that away. Okay, they have taken away Titan's ability to use glaives effectively in in-game content. And I know somebody's going to come in here and say, well, technically you can still use glaives, blah, blah, blah. But the whole point of using Syntheseps was so that you could put yourself in a potentially dangerous situation, get melee kills easily, okay, and clear, and basically do a room clear. Okay. And I know somebody else is gonna say, well, there's a bunch of ways you can clear rooms, stuff like that. But again, Destiny is a game all about different builds to try out and have fun with, right? What fun is it to be forced to use the exact same build for every single piece of content? What fun is it to sit there with a scout rifle and just pick off enemies one at a time? Like I'm doing in my gameplay here. But what fun is that? It can be fun the first or second time you do a Grandmaster Nightfall. And I'm gonna go ahead and continue on with this video. Anytime I refer to in-game content, anytime I refer to Grandmaster content, I'm gonna use that as my kind of, in-game reference. But what fun is it to go into Grandmaster Nightfall and just use a scout rifle the entire time? Again, maybe for your first, second, third completion, that's fine. But after a while, it's gonna get boring. It's like, okay, I want to use something besides my scout rifle. I want to use something besides a pulse rifle. Like, I want to play, risky, but with reward. And Syntheseps was a way to do that. Syntheseps was, essentially risk and reward. Yes, it was risky to be right up close to enemies, okay? Especially, at one melee kills. One enemy melee hit kills you. But with Syntheseps, high risk, high reward. And they've taken away the reward. And now all it is high risk. And honestly, what's the point of using something that's high risk when there's no benefit to it? Okay, and that's kind of my thoughts behind the whole idea with nerfing all glaives in combination with Syntheseps. I think that it was a poor decision on Bungie's part, and I do hope they revert this change, so that glaives maybe glaives don't take the full like 400% damage boost. Okay, because I understand glaive melees are substantially stronger than our standard melees. Okay, I am well aware of that. I am an average glaive aficionado here, but I think that when using Syntheseps, if it makes more sense to switch off of your glaive to use your regular melee, I think there's an issue. Okay, and I think that Bungie at least tuning the glaive damage down to where it's still better than than your standard melee, but not so much better that it breaks the game, would be an appropriate option. I'm thinking, in my head here, Syntheseps with the, with standard melees, and of course charge melees, make him do 400, allow him to do 400% more damage. I think that's fine. But maybe with glaives only get maybe like a 200% damage increase, because again, glaives damage is already higher than the standard melee in the game. Okay. And you can melee with a glaive faster. So I think it makes sense that there is a slight tuning here. But I think that the way that they went about it is a lot. I think it's a lot, and I think it's too much to make too much on glaives. And of course, I think Bungie needs to address the fact that Titans are really feel like we're getting the shaft. I mean, it seems like it's one thing after another with Titan nerfs, I'm not going to go into detail of those nerfs, but one of the more recent ones, of course, was was Strand Titan, which now that we've had it, it's pretty decent, but it's nowhere near as fun as like the Warlock and the little Threadling build and stuff like that, which I'm currently leveling up my Warlock and unlocking Strand on it. But from what I can tell, it is a lot more fun to use Strand Warlock than it is Strand Titan. Neither here nor there though. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the glaive and Synthesept combo. Again, I think Bungie should revert the change because I think that they have gone. I mean, they've killed Syntheseps in basically any level of content. Nobody uses Syntheseps if they're not using a glaive. So Syntheseps are going to drop in usage back to whatever they were before, which was really, really low on the chart, and that's kind of sad because Syntheseps, at D1 or D2's launch, they were really, really good, really popular, but they have since dropped off. And with glaives, they made a resurgence, and now they're going to fall back into the abyss. And I think that Bungie really should reconsider the nerf that they did to those. And again, not talking about Winterbite, because Winterbite is a whole different example. Winterbite deals immensely more damage than standard glaives. So I don't think that saying Winterbite is the same as a legend, or not, sorry, not a legendary glaive, but a special glaive is yeah, I don't think that Winterbite is anywhere in the same ballpark. So exclude Winterbite from that, but still, Bungie, bring Syntheseps and glaives back into the fray here. Bring them back so that, again, they're not doing 400% more damage. They're only doing maybe 200% more damage, or maybe 100% more damage. They're doing 2 times damage they normally would. That would still be, if I'm not mistaken, that would still be more than a standard melee with Syntheseps on. But again, when it makes more sense to switch off of a glaive, get a melee kill, and then put the glaive back on, you're starting to lose everybody's starting to wonder, like, what's the point of this? What's the point of this? And a little part of me, I'm going to go on a little rant here, or a little conspiracy theory, I should say here. A little part of me feels like, in relation to our video yesterday where Bungie has a much smaller staff working on Destiny 2 because they're working on a new IP. I feel like this is the fix, because instead of trying to separate legendary or special weapon glaives from the exotic heavy glaive, they've just decided, you know what, we're just gonna nerf all glaives. We're gonna do the good old band-aid fix. We're gonna nerf everything all at once and call it a day. And I think that that's an inappropriate action by Bungie. Bungie is the one that wants to make various weapons fit in different categories. For example, glaive, which has always been a special weapon, is now there's a heavy weapon. Instead of separating them, and individually tuning Winterbite, they're just throwing all the glaives together and saying, nope, we're gonna nerf them all. That way Winterbite won't be an issue. We won't have to deal with it anymore. And I don't like that. Again, I feel like that is Bungie just being lazy. And if not being lazy, that shows Bungie's lack of resources to Destiny 2. But I have rambled on long enough. What are your guys' thoughts on this change? Like, I know that probably a lot of non-Titan mains are going to have, opinions of, oh, well, it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. Like, glaives were busted. And I know a lot of Titan mains are going to be the opposite. A lot of Titan mains are going to say, no, it's not fair, stuff like that. But, like, think logically here. Like, is it really fair that Syntheseps got hit? Syntheseps and glaives, sorry. Want to make sure to make that clear. Syntheseps and glaives got hit this hard, to the point where it makes more sense to switch off of a glaive to do a melee than it does to keep the glaive on. I don't know. What are your thoughts? I'd like to hear them. Of course, if this video was entertaining or interesting to you, or if you agreed with it, or if you disagreed with it, or anything like that, give it a like. It really helps the channel out. And hey, subscribe, okay? We got lots of Destiny content coming up, lots of rambling rants that lots of people enjoy. So drop a sub, and that's it for me. I'm out of here, guys. See you later. See ya.